of it?
No, they're like garbage questions.
Take that down there, will you, Mark, whenever you...
Started, if you would, get settled and please silence your cell phones for us. We'd appreciate that.
Where's your lights off? Gavel.
You gonna give me a gavel tonight?
I tend to use it to
I'll make do with it.
Google Maps and things sometimes.
Okay, guys, we're ready to get started if you guys are. Hello, everybody. The time is approximately 7 p.m. and the June 20th, 2024 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting will now begin. Good evening to all of those of you that are in attendance. My name is Scott Russ. I'm the chairman that will be conducting tonight's meeting. We appreciate that every one of you has taken the time from your schedules to attend tonight's meeting to observe how our town government works. Please note that all Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meetings are public notice per Tennessee state law. This Planning Commission meeting is being audio and video recorded tonight and will be posted on the Farragut YouTube channel, and links to this and other Planning Commission meeting recordings may also be found on the Town of Farragut website. Any of you, those of you that are in attendance tonight should be able to pick up a copy of the agenda at the door when you came in tonight. For any persons here tonight who would like to address this commission concerning an item on tonight's agenda, please pick up a blue comment card with Mr. Shipley or at the door and write your name, address, and agenda number item on that you wish to comment on, and please provide that to Mark. There will also be time reserved at the end of the business meeting for resident comments on non-agenda subjects, which also require that you fill out a blue comment card. In order to conduct efficient business-like meetings, the town has adopted rules for how its meetings will be conducted. These rules are designed to keep the meeting progressing along, assure that all points of view are heard and considered, and to provide common courtesy to everyone. We ask that you observe the established meeting protocols found on the back page of tonight's agenda when addressing members of the Planning Commission. So with all that said and the housekeeping done, I now ask that if you're able, please stand for a moment of silence for prayer and reflection be followed by the recital of our Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First, I'd like to ask any of the commissioners if you have any announcements or recognitions that you'd like to make this evening.
None.
With none, approval of the agenda. I've established that we have 8 commissioners present, and therefore, Mark, we have a quorum for tonight's proceedings. Are there any amendments to the agenda for the June 20th Planning Commission meeting?
Yes, agenda item number 5.
All right, thank you. Agenda number 5 has been postponed. Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved. Second.
With a second on the floor, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes. Let the record show that the agenda has been approved. 8 yeses, 0 noes. Approval of the minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes from the May 16th, 2024 FMPC meeting?
Motion to approve. Second.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Noes? No noes. Let the record show that the posted May 16th agenda minutes have been approved. 8 yes, no noes. It looks like tonight we have with the amended agenda, 7 business items for consideration in our public hearing, and we'll start off with the appointment of our youth representative for the upcoming fiscal year.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Anna Presley.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor of appointing Anna Presley as the youth representative for the 2025 fiscal year, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Noes? No noes. Let the record show that Anna Presley will become the 2025 fiscal year youth representative.
I would like to say
Thank you.
we appreciate Leo Davis. He's been with us the past 12 months, and he's done a great job, attended almost all the meetings, and when he couldn't attend, it was definitely an emergency situation. And he's getting ready to depart for Boston College in the fall, so we wish him luck, and we appreciate his service to the Planning Commission and to the town.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you, Leo.
All right.
Well, hopefully this last year will help you a little bit with some of that history part.
Definitely not planning. I don't think after being on the Planning Commission for a year, it was definitely not going to be
A lot of
there.
history.
He changed his major after
Yeah, I
that
think so.
year.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 4 is discussion of a Town of Farragut wayfinding schematic design plan. Town of Farragut applicant, Mark, if you would, or
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Hallie Riddle, Tourism Manager for the Town of Farragut, and she can introduce this item.
Hi, I'm Hallie Riddle, the Tourism Manager for the Town of Farragut. I have with us today 2 representatives from Guide Design Studios, Kevin and Jamie. They are here to present to this group the 60% version of our wayfinding package. The 30% version has been presented to VRRB and to our subcommittee for the wayfinding project. We are asking for your feedback to prepare for our 90% presentation, which will be presented to the board. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin and Jamie.
Thank you. I'm Kevin, by the way. So before we get into the design, we just want to do
Kevin, could you just please give us your address for the record, please?
our address. So
Yes.
Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know what our street address is, honestly.
Cleveland, Ohio, for the record.
Sorry. Okay, so before we get into the design, we just want to give a brief overview of kind of how we got to where we are. Because with any wayfinding program, the strategy and the plan is really as important as what the signs actually look like. So we just kind of want to walk you through that so you understand that there was a purpose behind what we've arrived at. So just to let you know, back in September, I think it was, we came here, we met with the core client team, we held some steering committee and stakeholder meetings with people, gathered a lot of information, went on a tour, and then developed our assessment from there. So everything we did was based on feedback given to us by residents, business owners, city or town officials, and things like that. So just briefly, we asked, we do a one word to describe Farragut. Some of the words that came out were quality destination, green and growing, kind of came to the forefront. Others were comfortable, classy, healthy parks. So we just used this to start, formulating what these signs might represent out in the field. With these groups, we go through what we call a journey mapping exercise. So we're determining what are the top destinations that people are looking for when they come to town. That's not to say that only those destinations will be on signs, but we have to start prioritizing because you have a limit to how much can go on signs. So we have to understand what are people truly looking for. So again, this is all based on feedback from the groups. This isn't just Guide Studio picking destinations. We assess what the current challenges are. Some of the biggest ones were that the signs aren't big enough. Maybe the quality of them is lacking. They're a little bit worn, so they're not representing those words that we presented at the beginning, the quality and Another issue is that you're developing this sort of town center, but it's a new concept kind of to people. So educating people that this town center is actually a destination to go to kind of was a key challenge that we're hoping to solve. We look at different travel paths, so we take the top 5 to 6 destinations and actually map out how people are getting to them from all the entry points. And this is just so that we're not cluttering the town with signs everywhere. There's purposeful placement of signage. So you can see all the circles is really the decision points and where you need signs. So again, we're not just randomly putting signs at every corner. We're understanding where signs are actually needed because that's where people are making decisions. And this is just the town center, you know, it's just a blow off of town center. And then some of the strategies. So with wayfinding, again, with information, you can't put too much information on signage with traffic going 25, 35. In your case, some roads are 40, 50 miles an hour. You can only read 3 to 4 messages. So we have to start breaking down the information. So again, based on that feedback we received, the destinations at the top kind of came to the forefront of what people are looking for when they first enter town. And a lot of your destinations are in town center, so to be able to not have to list everything individually, on the outskirts of town, we're just directing to town center. And then when they get to town center, we're gonna start actually showing what destinations are in town center. So we kind of call it like peeling the onion. It's kind of like giving them general information so they know that, for instance, the community center is in town center. So they'll have to look for town center, look for direction to town center, and then they'll start seeing more specific information. And then just, I'm not gonna read through all of our summary of recommendations, but I think the top 3 are probably came to the forefront of kind of what we're trying, what are some of the bigger goals. Make stronger gateway signs, so when you enter town, you know you're in Farragut. Add, obviously, clear wayfinding. The point of the wayfinding program is to get people to their destination clearly. And then the third one is to establish town center as a top destination. So like I said, it's a new concept. So place-making town center and making it feel like a special area of town is another kind of key point to this wayfinding system. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to talk about the design. Yeah, this is just, we can just go through this quickly. This is just to show you, based on those decision points that I was talking about, we've started what we call programming, which is, you know, locating different signs, determining what sign types are needed and what the messages should be.
So now we'll get into some of the visuals. After we did all that research, we started to create some, started to think about what the design of these signs would be. So first couple slides are showing some mood boards, some imagery and colors, materials of how these what we can start to use with these signs. Most of this is being picked up from like the town center in terms of color, materials, and some of the details that are in those buildings and architectural structures. And so then we developed the kind of sign family. This is at 60% currently. We've been meeting with the steering committee and getting feedback throughout our steps from concept to now at this point. And these are based on the chosen concept and mood board direction that we just showed. So we have on the left-hand side, we are showing the gateway signs, something a little bit more substantial and visible than what is currently used. And then that's kind of moving towards directional signs in the middle there that are giving directions to certain destinations. We have certain ones that are kind of more of the town-wide, and then we have a specific set that is used for just the town center. So it's a little bit more detail in town center, and also trying to, again, fit a little bit more of the kind of quaint and architectural details that are apparent in town center. And then moving into some kiosks, we have a special sign for Farragut Station, trying to identify that area of the town. Facility and park identification signs. and then some pedestrian signs as well along the greenway, and, you know, even street signs, just trying to help enhance those and create more of a sense of place, identifying some of these locations and allowing the visitor to know that, okay, I'm in the town center, and I also am in Farragut. The next slide here, just because we didn't have, we wanted to show us a little bit more of the detail. This is more of a placemaking item that is going to be, we're proposing at McGill Plaza. There's an archway over kind of the stairway. There's an image there in the middle that's kind of giving an idea of where it would be. Again, just showing how we can start to create some place. So wayfinding is not just about getting you to your destination, but it's also notifying the public of where you are. And so creating that sense of place, creating a special moment at McGill Plaza, and helping to identify that area. Again, helping to strengthen the notion that this is town center. And so some of the details there, we're showing some herringbone patterns that have been picked up from the brick that would be cut out of metal, so you'd be able to see through it. And some dimensional letters and some dimensional items and elements, again, referencing the architectural details within the town. And so our next steps are to, again, meet with the board sometime in August and get approval as we move forward into 90%.
Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Commissioners, just to note that this is a discussion-only item, and I would just, before I open it up to any questions for anybody, I was wondering if you could provide any of the feedback that you received from the Visual Resources Review Board last month. Just kind of give us, you know, a brief summary of what some of the things that came up during that meeting would be. I think it'd be beneficial to the people here and also the other commissioners.
So from what I can remember, a big topic was we changed the design of the arch. Originally, the word Farragut was at the top, but it didn't look quite right, so we decided to move it at the center. And there was also a focus on the colors, making sure we kind of kept the blue color that was on the street signs that we have everywhere else and keeping it consistent with the town's brand.
Thank you. That's good. Good summary. Do we have anything else that sticks out to you? Do we want to open it up for discussion across the board? Okay, I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Devlin. Do you have any comments? Do you had a chance to look at it and appreciate any feedback that you have?
I think it's needed. I like the designs a lot.
Okay.
That's it. Simple.
Commissioner Preston?
The only thing I would have is there an alternative? You know, like, we have the sign, but is there a different version of the sign with the archway that we could see?
Did you say specifically or just the archway? Is there something specific on, like, is there, I mean?
Sure, I just feel like the herringbone looks a little bit busy to me. It's
Okay.
kind of distracting away from Farragut, even if you do the dimensional letters. So maybe something a little bit more simple,
Okay,
but that's just my opinion.
okay, so it's that, no, that's what, I was just, so it's the herringbone, it's not necessarily the arch.
Yeah, even just the scale, you could make the herringbone larger, or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe, yeah, we can look at that, or even maybe making it smaller might make I don't know, we can play with it, but understanding what your comment is helpful so that we can play with it. Sure.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Noah?
I like the direction that we're going with this, and I'd like to see it move forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Pinchak?
Yeah, I've been on the steering committee from the beginning, and I really appreciate what you all have done. Guys done a super job. I think you might want to explain about the herringbone, that you can see through that. It's not solid, so I don't know if you're aware. Were you aware? Okay, all right, just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
you can see through it, so there'll be some shadowing. It's a little stark, I know, here, but I do understand the concern. So we could study it a little bit more, and maybe, we can even model it to see what the shadows do to it. I think there's a little more studying that needs to be done to it.
Okay. Commissioner Green?
Yeah, I fully support what you're doing and what you've done, but I have an additional comment for consideration. Since September of last year, quite a bit has happened down at what I'll call West Farragut, down at the corner of Watt Road and Kingston Pike. We've got an apartment complex that's been formed there. We've got, tonight, and we'll talk about later today, this evening, we'll talk about some retail stores that are going to be built there. Across the street, we have a major chain grocery store that's going in, and there'll be retail stores there as well. We have several stores that are in progress, if you've driven down there in the last few days. And the temple is going in down there. So my point is, and that whole area all the way from the, bordered on the west by the town line, and bordered on the east probably by the dollar store. From that point on Kingston Pike all the way down there is all commercial pretty much. So if we look ahead a few years, that's really going to be an area of destination, I think. And if nothing else, for right now, it seems like it would be nice if we could like name it West Knoxville. I think Farragut Junction is the name of the apartment, but I think Farragut Junction doesn't really tell you where it is. It could be anywhere in town. So even I think calling it West Farragut might be an option. But I really think you guys ought to give that some thought. Oh, and the park, I forgot the park. You got the park there, plus you got the cool school sports there. So you got quite a bit going on down there. It's going to be one of the three areas of town. You're going to have the Parkside area, you're going to have Town Center area, and then you're going to have this, what I call West Farragut. So my suggestion is that you give that some thought and see if you want to at least name that area. And then later on, if you want to add some signage to provide more detail, that's certainly an option. But that's my comment.
And that's over by the two parks, McPhee and Mayor Bob.
So they're closer to Mayor Bob, yeah.
Okay.
Corner of Watt Road and Kingston Pike.
Yeah, it would be bordered to the north with Bob Leonard Park, to the south behind Pool Sports, and essentially both sides of Kingston Pike down to the dollar store, and then to the west at the town line, essentially. That would be the area that I would define it.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Vice Chairman St. Clair?
Only two comments, and they're all concerned basically the sign shown on the screen. One, to me, I think the placement, it's a little overbearing, and the location being already in the center of town, I don't know what we're trying to do, what the objective of it is, to say we're in Farragut. Well, if you're at that point in time on the corner down there, you know you're in Farragut, or else you're pretty lost. And it seems to be pretty overbearing for the site and the site size. It just, other than that, I don't think I have any real issues with anything else in the plan. I just thought that was a little overbearing. What was the objective of the sign, period?
I feel like that sign, to me, and I to be honest, I reviewed this with the VRRB. I was present for that discussion, and I think it is an iconic sign to identify the town. I guess I agree with you. Yeah, you know where you're at when you're there.
Well, it could be iconic, but it could be in a different location. I mean, it doesn't, you know, if you're coming down Campbell Station, most likely you're coming from out of town. You're coming from the interstate, for instance.
Yeah,
You don't see it from that direction, basically, unless you're looking back at it.
It's not so much about the wayfinding. It was more of sort of like a landmark. People can take pictures, and you're kind of at that corner, and there's a lot of traffic, and you don't really know that maybe a plaza is up there if you're not familiar.
Well,
so I just thought it would just give some.
That's my comment. I asked for my comments, and that's my comments. I think it's overbearing, and I don't think it has a real objective at that point.
Thank you, Ed. Mayor Williams?
I've got nothing to add.
Okay. And like I said, so Hallie, what would the next steps be? It goes to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Is that at the 90% completion or at the current 60% completion?
We'll get 90%, so we'll take this feedback recommendate to fill out the next.
Okay, very, very good. Thank you, Kevin and Jamie. I appreciate it. Thank you, Hallie. Next item is agenda item number 6, discussion and public hearing on a request to amend the Farragut zoning map for parcel 15402, tax map 130, west of the Cotton Eye Joe's from C2 to ODREE 3.1 acres. Cox Universal Group applicant.
Yes, this is an item we discussed last month. This property is the former West Park Inn on Outlet Drive. It's currently zoned regional commercial C2. They're requesting to rezone it to Outlet Drive Regional Entertainment Employment District. The applicant has a desire to construct a 4-story hotel on the property, and the Outlet Drive Entertainment Employment District has a lower masonry percentage for buildings that are more than 25,000 square feet or more than 2 stories in height. And that is desired for this particular building to help with the cost of the construction. Because in the C2 district, they're still held to the 75% masonry that's standard throughout most of the town. As I talked about last month when we created this Outlet Drive district, we took into consideration the context, the fact that a lot of the area is surrounded by Knox County and it has mostly metal buildings. There's not a lot of masonry on most of those buildings. It's also along the interstate and kind of detached from the rest of the town. So that was the reason why the Planning Commission and the board was ultimately okay with lowering the masonry percentage in this particular district. So the applicant's desire to construct a hotel on this property is consistent with the objectives and intent of this zoning district that they're requesting. Okay. It also helps with the town's tourism program. Included in your packet is a copy of Resolution PC-24-06, which recommends approval of this rezoning request through Ordinance 24-10, and the staff recommends approval of Ordinance 24-10.
All right, thank you, Mark. Based on staff information provided, I'll now need a motion and a second before opening up for discussion.
Move for approval.
Got approval, St. Clair. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, John. Thank you. Mark, do we have a representative from the applicant to speak this
Yes, we
evening?
do. We do have an applicant representative. I don't know if they have anything to add to that, but they are here if you have any questions.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation? Okay, Mark, do we have anybody signed up to speak on this?
No, not on this item, no, sir.
Okay. With that said, since we did discuss this at the last commission meeting, rather than a roll call discussion, I'll ask anybody if they have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to add to the discussion.
Good.
None? Speak now or forever hold your peace. With discussion completed, and we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. I ask all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes. Mark, let the record show that agenda item number 6, public hearing, request to amend the zoning map parcel 15402, tax map 130, has been approved with a vote of 8 yeas, 0 noes. Agenda item number 7, public hearing on a site plan for a new hotel concept for the property at 11320 Outlet Drive, formerly approved as a SCORE Hotel, that's S-K-O-R-E, 4.34 acres, zoned ODREE. Land Development Solutions, the applicant.
This is an amendment to the SCORE Hotel site plan that was approved in May of 2023. This is the layout plan that was approved with SCORE Hotel. As you'll see, it's very similar to what the applicant's requesting at this time. Then these were the building elevation renderings for the SCORE Hotel that were approved in May of last year. So the applicant is increasing the room count from 106 to 124, and that's necessitated an additional tier of parking, row of parking on the east part of the project, basically this. So really the only site layout change is pretty much the addition of this section of parking along the east. The building footprint is still roughly the same. Because this is a different concept, the building elevation appearance is changing slightly. And these are some of the images of the proposed building. It's actually a higher masonry percentage than what was originally approved. It's a thin brick, but that is a type of brick that is acceptable. It is mortared in place. It's just a thinner style of brick that's a little more economically viable and more sustainable. So this is one of the building elevation renderings. This is the other. And that's basically the main changes that are being proposed at this time. The staff has reviewed the revised plans and didn't have any additional comments except for the need for a letter of credit for erosion control. The town engineer would have to provide them with an amount for that. So with that one subject too, the staff recommends approval of this amendment to the original SCORE Hotel site plan.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Based on staff's information, I'll need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second?
Do we have a member, somebody representing Land Development Solutions that has anything they'd like to add this evening?
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay, good. Good, thank you very much. Mark, do we have anybody signed up to speak on this item?
No, sir.
Okay, with that said, again, like we've discussed this, we've already approved the former site plan. I believe we've discussed this at last month's meeting, so at this time, I'll open it up to commissioners if they have any questions or comments or any additional information they'd like to provide or ask. And I think Commissioner Pinchuk?
Yeah, I just
floor
want
is
to,
yours.
I'm sorry. I just want to remind the developer that the ground sign, monument sign, needs to be on the landscape sign for VRB. I guess you're aware of that. Just want to confirm that you are. Okay, that's all I had.
Is anybody else?
I have a couple of questions here. On
Commissioner
the
Green?
original driveway, it looked like it was kind of an abutment for a future connection to the adjacent property, but that's no longer on the drawing.
No, they've actually added a note to the site plan to clarify that. They just have it, let me pull that up. So this actually, whatever happens to the east, this will be extended. There's actually a note that's been added to the site plan. It's just they had to make it curved just to accommodate proper radius for this additional parking. So they'll have to reconfigure that a little bit, but it will be extending. So that whatever happens here will have the same common access point onto Outlet Drive. It won't have a separate access to the east of this.
My
That
second
makes sense.
question is to satisfy my curiosity. It looks like you have less total square footage and more rooms. So did you make the room smaller? Did you get rid of some common space, or what's the story there?
It's a little bit of both. So the rooms
You-
are a little bit smaller size.
You'll need to come to the mic. Yep.
My name is Bruce Collins. I'm with Rosemont Holdings. We're the development arm of the ownership of the property. And my address is 656 South Main Street, Greenville, South Carolina.
Thank you.
So yes, the rooms are more what I would call prototypical hotel rooms. The SCORE brand have larger rooms and anticipated a little different concept on food and beverage side and sort of in conjunction with the Topgolf. All of that sort of disappeared through COVID and some other changes. So this is a Marriott brand. That common area shrank a little bit. No more swing suites in the lobby and things like that disappeared, and those got replaced with hotel rooms.
Are the same amenities, like,
Well, there is no real food and beverage program to compete with Topgolf, or hopefully we get some future restaurants on the out parcel of other places, but there's not a
fitness or anything like that?
There's a fitness room, a small gathering area in the lobby, regular lobby, guest laundry, and then the back of house.
All right, thanks. I'm just kind of curious what was going on there. Appreciate that.
Okay. Very good. I just want to make one note, just something clerical. There were two references to the previous, I think 126 units on some of the site plans there. I think there were two references still referring to the previous number of
Other
units.
key count.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just something a little clerical.
We'll correct that.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Discussion now completed, and a motion and a second on the floor. I'll ask all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Noes? No noes? Mark, let the record show that agenda item number 7, approval of site plan for the new hotel concept at 11320 Outland Drive has been approved. 8 yes, 0 noes. Thank you. The next item we have is an item that's discussion-only purposes, and there's no public hearing on this. It's discussion on an amendment to the development concept plan for the commercial portion of the Kingston Pike Village, Farragut Junction Planned Commercial District, or PCD, project at the southwest intersection of Kingston Pike and South Watt Road. Daniel Smith, applicant.
Well, the applicant isn't here yet because he was coming in a little later. I didn't realize how long the wayfinding would take. So he may or may not get here in time, but I could give you an overview real quick.
Do we want to?
If you want to
I'm okay
go to
let's
the next
flip
item.
that out and let's go to agenda item
No, we
number
can come
9.
back
And
to
we'll
that.
give him a few minutes to get here then. Okay, agenda item number 9 is discussion and public hearing on amendments to the Farragut Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Article 5, driveways and other access ways, Section 22-147, traffic impact study requirements to provide additional consideration for pedestrians and bicyclists. Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah, this is something we reviewed last month. As I mentioned, when the Board of Mayor and Aldermen had their strategic planning retreat, one of the top priorities under the advancing a high-quality and well-maintained community was to revisit the town's existing traffic impact study requirements and to have some language included in there that gave consideration to pedestrians and bicyclists. What are the existing pedestrian and bicycle facilities in the study area? What could be the impacts of the proposed development on pedestrians and bicyclists and the facilities that accommodate those types of users? So the staff put together some draft language that we looked at last month. I did send that to some of the transportation engineers, and they did provide some minor comments that I did include in Ordinance 24-11, but my understanding is they were generally okay with the language. It made sense to them. So with that, the staff recommends approval of Resolution PC-24-07, which recommends approval of Ordinance 24-11 to amend the existing traffic impact study requirements to account for impacts to pedestrians and bicyclists.
All right, thank you, Mark. Based on staff information provided, I'll need a motion and a second.
Motion to approve Resolution PC-2407.
Second.
Need a second. St. Clair. Okay, Mark, do we have any other input? Or before I open it up to the floor?
I have no other comments on it.
Commissioner Devlin, do you have any comments you'd like to make, add to this?
Yeah, I don't see the future holding anything more than more pedestrians and more bicyclists, so I completely support doing this. It's important to keep those people safe.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Commissioner Preston?
No comments?
Commissioner Meyer?
Pass.
Commissioner Pinchuk?
Pass.
Commissioner Green?
I have a couple of comments.
Okay, Commissioner Green, the floor is yours.
Mark, can you take us to the slide that shows the changes in red?
I don't have the slide in the PowerPoint that shows the
Okay,
changes.
well, this may be a little awkward then.
I have it, a hard copy, if you have a question
No,
about
I have it in front of me, but here's the deal. The change as written in red gives requirements for the engineer preparing the impact study. Okay, for the engineer preparing the study.
it. Right.
Whereas the existing text does not. It only talks about the supervision of the person doing
Okay.
the work.
Right.
So I'm thinking we kind of should be consistent with that, rather than trying to impose another layer of.
So take out that sentence that says the
Well,
engineer.
I'll get to the recommendation here
All
to
right.
simplify the thing. Because we're putting in a specific requirement for the guy that's doing it for the pedestrian stuff, but
Right.
not for the guy that's doing it for the regular traffic stuff.
I guess.
So we got two
Yeah.
levels of.
Yeah, I understand.
Of requirement, okay?
Yep.
And the other thing is the last sentence in that actually gives a requirement for the impact study requirements, which really is already covered back in the other text. That last one is, this shall specifically
Yeah.
be addressed
All
in
right.
the traffic impact study. So
Yeah.
I'd recommend we just delete that sentence.
So just delete those
That
two,
last
those two
sentence,
last sentences.
because we really have covered that back in the
Okay.
text in section 22147.
I'm all
Now,
for
To
simple.
accommodate my first comment, what I would recommend is, at the end of the first sentence, that ends existing or proposed developments, section E,
Oh, for existing, yeah. Gotcha.
section E, the
Yep.
first sentence that ends with, for existing or proposed developments.
Yep.
Okay, that sentence is talking about training and experience, okay? So I would recommend that at the end of that sentence, we insert another sentence that says, that training and experience shall include emphasis for the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists in the traffic studies. And that gives us the requirement that whoever's supervising the work has to have that experience.
Okay.
And it takes it out of the actual guy that's doing it, which is inconsistent with what's already there.
All right.
So I'm proposing a change to delete the change that's shown
Okay.
and to add that sentence, and I can read it again if you'd like.
Well, I'm just going to get it from you. That
Okay.
way I've got,
All right.
you just need to read it out for the record and make sure the planning commissioners are okay with
All
what
right.
you're saying.
Well, I would caution, when you look at that, I don't look at the exact text, but in the professional engineering world, you know, there's direct supervision, and there's also the person doing the work and what their license requirements are and what have you. So I think you just need to vet that to make sure they're not getting crosswise with the.
Well, I'm just trying to be
Professional
consistent with what's in
Well, I
there
understand,
already.
I understand it can be consistent, but it needs to be consistent with the professional engineering statutes. That's all I'm saying.
I'd like to also point out that here in East Tennessee, we only have a handful of traffic engineers to pick from. And we've got to be careful if we make it too specific. There's not going to be a traffic engineer in Tennessee that may have that specific training in pedestrian and bicycle. So I'm all for making it simpler and taking out some of the additional sentences, but I'm not for necessarily making a traffic engineer that particular traffic engineer may not exist with the credentials that we're asking for.
That's what I'm doing, I'm taking it out.
Well, I heard that you wanted to add some additional
No, that's for the,
pedestrian
that's for the
certification.
supervision, under the supervision of qualified, it's the part that's already there. Okay, it says, traffic impact studies shall be prepared under the supervision of a qualified engineer who has specific training.
Commissioner Green, what section are you on? Let me take a look at it.
It's,
Section
the marked
E,
up version?
page 2, section
Where it says
E.
required qualifications?
Yeah.
Required qualifications.
Yes.
The first sentence talks about qualifications that are there now, and we were adding not qualifications for the supervision, but qualifications for the actual engineer, and I'm taking that out.
Okay.
And putting in that the guy who's supervising has some emphasis, has had some training, he should have some training.
I would think so in this day and time. What I don't want to do is eliminate the ability to find a traffic engineer, but I think if we can simplify the process.
You know, that's what I'm trying to do,
Okay.
actually. Because as it exists now, we're requiring the traffic engineer, the guy that's doing the work, to have that training. And what I'm trying to do is make it consistent with what's there and have the supervision. Okay, somebody in that group ought to have some experience. If they don't, then we probably should be dealing with somebody else.
You may want to say that sentence again for the record, just to,
Yeah,
so
and
the commissioners
what
can
I'm
hear
trying to
that.
do is at the end of that first sentence, the sentence ending with "for existing or proposed developments," period, to add a sentence that says, "that training and experience shall include emphasis for the safety of pedestrians and bicyclists in the traffic studies." And that's what I want to amend our motion to.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, I feel like Commissioner Green's additional sentence is making it more difficult for a traffic engineer to qualify for this. And maybe I'm misunderstanding it.
Well, it's less than what's already there in red.
So, and you're under section E?
Yeah, in red, it says, "The engineer preparing the traffic study shall have the expertise to determine the proposed project with recommended modifications provided in the traffic impact study will improve. So they're requiring it for the engineer doing the work, and what I'm trying to do is take it out of the engineer doing the work and put it in the supervision.
Well, I mean, typically, a lot of times the engineer will have a staff that works for his or her firm, and then the engineer is the one that actually signs off on the,
Exactly.
on the report. I would think it's up to the engineer of record to determine whether or not their staff is competent to prepare the report. Ultimately, the engineer's name and stamp is on the document.
But my suggestion is you have Darrell look at the language. Make
Yeah,
sure
he
it's not-
has. So is
exact
Alan
language is
Childers.
in there?
Huh?
The exact language of what John's talking about?
Absolutely. No, not that language, no. He looked at the language that was in the ordinance. It may be simpler just to take the red out and leave it as is, the rest of it, because the way I read it, it's, says of a qualified engineer who has specific training in traffic and transportation engineering and experience related to preparing traffic studies for existing and proposed developments. Well, I mean, transportation, pedestrians and bicyclists are a form of transportation, so you may not even need that additional language. You just take out the language that John was referring to that's in red, if you want to
Okay
do
with
that.
Because we have requirements back in the text
Yeah.
that's included.
And that's, I don't think Darrell or
I don't
the
have a
other,
problem
the other
with that.
folks would have any
I don't have
concerns
a problem
with that.
I don't like imposing on the engineer that he have that training.
Does
I'd
that
be
make
willing to
sense?
amend my motion to, if we struck the red in section E.
Okay.
I'd second that again.
All right.
I'm good with that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Commissioners, we have an amended,
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
This is more of a question regarding like just the, I guess, idea of it as a whole, because I skimmed this a while ago, it's been a bit, but just, I was kind of thinking about this with agenda item 6, where like, there's the hotel on one side of the highway and then going underneath. Do we know roughly when, like, we've talked about a sidewalk or something there, do we know if that's like in the upcoming years, or is that just kind of generally a, pipe dream, if that makes sense?
Here's the question.
I'm not sure what the question, what was, we talking about the some future pie-in-the-sky bridge we talked about across I-40? Is that what we're talking
No,
about?
like, the planning commission in the past has talked about a sidewalk or some kind of transportation for pedestrians across I-40 or underneath it or whatever. I was just wondering if that's like upcoming or whatnot, seeing as we have like Topgolf and now the hotel's going on the other side of the highway, so there's like more stuff there and it might be more necessary, if that makes sense.
I don't think it's in the near term. When I say near term, I don't think it's in the 10-year plan. I think there has been discussion about it. There's actually been discussion about it actually having maybe even a new interchange somewhere in the middle between Lovell Road and Campbell Station, but definitely some connectivity in the future between Outlet Drive and Turkey Creek or Parkside would be a great improvement, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon just because of the dollars involved to build a project, whether it's just pedestrian only or vehicular and pedestrian. But to answer your question is, yes, we all want that, but it's probably not in the near future.
You keep pushing, Leo, though. You're the future.
Yeah,
That's right, you are the future.
Thank you, Leo. Okay, we have an amended motion and an amended second on the floor. I'll ask that all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes, noes, no noes. Let the record show that, is it PC 2407?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, just check, I don't have my notes. PC 2407 is approved with a vote of 8 yes, no noes. Moving on to agenda item number 10, public discussion and public hearing on the approval of the Town of Farragut Mixed-Use Town Center Vision Plan.
Does the other applicant for number 8 come back?
I haven't seen that, Mark. We don't have the applicant for number 8 yet, right? I haven't seen that come up.
He has not arrived yet.
Okay.
Thank you for asking, Ed. Agenda item number 10, discussion and public hearing on approval of the Town of Farragut Mixed-Use Town Center Vision Plan. Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah, This item was discussed last month. I went through each chapter in the draft that the consultant put together. And basically, we talked about how we got to this point. This has been going on for about a year. One of the things that has been a big focus of this whole process was the public engagement. That was one of the chapters, actually, in this plan. Just to give you an overview of the public engagement that we had 4 open house workshops. The first one was August 31st. We had 2 of those, 136 participants. Then we had, that was August of obviously last year. April 9th, we had 2 workshops. We had 70 participants. Then we also had 2 surveys that were sent out. The first was early on when the applicant or the consultant put together a draft plan. That was sent out in September. We had over 200 responses to that. And then when they had the final plan, before we had the public workshops, we put together a survey that was up basically the whole month of March, and we had over 1,200 responses to that survey. We've had 2 public steering committee meetings. We had a stakeholder meeting with 5 different stakeholder groups representing different aspects of the community, homeowners, developers, business representatives, and so forth. We've had this presented at 2 staff developer meetings, which are public meetings. We, of course, talked about the whole plan last month and went through that in detail. And now it's here before you for a recommendation through resolution PC-24-08. Based on the feedback that we received from the draft plan, most of the comments were clerical in nature. We had a few of those things that were just typos or errors that were clerical, again, in nature. The 2 things that did come up in last month's discussion that we did make some changes to. The first was dealing with the Concord Road corridor. Originally, townhomes were shown all the way down to Pleasant Forest Cemetery. You have to keep in mind that this property is currently zoned office that's across from Thornton Heights. So the plan has residential, townhome residential, that would be across from existing residential. So the plan is actually less, intense, I guess, than the current zoning potentially could be. So you got residential across from residential. So they did lessen the amount of townhomes along that corridor. And we did add a civic institutional space for the cemetery to grow into in the future. Of course, this area in green is all the Turkey Creek floodplain. And that's mostly very difficult or undevelopable, a lot of it. So those were the main changes there. We also showed any potential access points, although this is much in more detail than really this vision plan is designed for, would line up with existing streets in Thornton Heights. There wouldn't be any other curb cuts along Concord Road. That was another thing that was mentioned. And then another comment that we received quite a few comments from the citizens on, and some board members, were the raised medians that were shown in Kingston Pike. Those have been taken out of this plan. Of course, some future planning commissioner board could certainly revisit that, but they have been taken out of this plan because there were just too many concerns that people had with stacking and visibility and other things like that. So frankly, throughout this whole process, we like I said, we received hundreds and hundreds of comments, and we've tried to take those into consideration. Another good example of where we did that was Bridgewater subdivision, which I know they've had some people sign up to speak. We did listen to what their concerns was. I don't have let me see if I can pull this up a little bit, but originally the streets were shown to connect into Bridgewater. There was a conceptual street that was connecting into a street that stubs to the Biddle Farm that was really designed to be connected to. The plan's been changed to not show that. It just basically generically says that there should be a connection somewhere to the south that ends up in Red Mill, and that doesn't necessarily have to go through Bridgewater. And so what the plan now shows is a walking trail that stubs into the end of that street, into the Bridgewater subdivision. So that was another example of where we took the public input. The plan that's presented reflects the predominant public input that we received. And we did make some adjustments to those areas that were of concern, like the Bridgewater. We also originally, there was a connection into Glen Abbey. They took that out. There was a little bit more intense development in the existing commercial zone portion of the Ford Tract. That's been changed to an event center, boutique hotel for this particular space. Another thing that I need to be clear about, and we could add this as language to the ordinance if we needed to as far as the adoption language, but this is a vision plan. This is not requirements. Everything in this plan does not have to happen, and it certainly doesn't have to happen the way it's shown. It's a vision document that is used to guide potential decisions for development and redevelopment, just like our architectural design guidelines that were adopted by ordinance in 2015. There's things in there that were shown on the Outlet Drive and Campbell Station Inn property in the plan that didn't occur. And in fact, it's very different from what's in the plan. But we don't amend plans every time some graphic isn't realized. That's not the purpose of a vision plan. A vision plan is just that. It's a vision. It's broad concepts that decision makers can rely on to make decisions on more detailed requirements, whether it's ordinance amendments, budget, capital investment programs. So just want to be clear about that, because I know there's been some comments out there about that everything in this plan basically is prescriptive, and that's what needs to happen. That's inaccurate. That's not the case. So anyway, that's kind of an overview of how we got to this point. Again, only 2 major areas of change. The rest of them were clerical in nature. If anybody has any questions or comments of me, I'll be happy to try to answer those. I do have some people that have signed up to speak on this.
All right, thank you, Mark, and thank you. I don't think you can emphasize enough that this is just a vision plan. This isn't a zoning. This isn't something that's in concrete that's going to happen tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now. It's a vision plan, and that is all that this is. This vision plan was derived from input from the citizens of the town of Farragut. Thank you. So before we move on and open it up for discussion and questions, we will need a motion and a second on the floor.
Motion to approve?
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. With that said, Mark, you said we have, how many people do we have signed up to speak on this item?
I'm not sure. I think I have 5.
5? Yes, okay. So if you would, when Mark calls your name, please step to the podium and address the commission, and please give your name and your address, please.
I will note that if this clock doesn't work, because I have trouble with this thing, you have 5 minutes.
We're on a 5-minute clock.
I will keep you on the Sunto, which never fails me. So, and the first speaker is Mike Mitchell, and after Mike, we have Alderman David White.
Mr. Mitchell, if you would, please make your way to the podium. Thank you.
My name's Mike Mitchell. I live on Brixworth Boulevard. Mayor, commissioners, Mark, thank you for your time. So I believe that other people will speak about the parking garage. I won't dwell on that. I believe that Alderman Burnett's going to ask you to remove it. So on May 16th, I ask you to remove the tree-filled medians. So I come again to ask you that. I believe that that's a public safety issue. I certainly don't want that on Concord Road, specifically on Concord Road. And We already have it on Jamestown Boulevard. So can we just say mission accomplished? And I ask you to remove it on Campbell Station Road because of its proximity to rural metro, which is a first responder. I ask you to, there is a formula, which I spoke to you on May 16th about. It is a ratio of turning radius. And my concern, and the reason I want you to remove it, is we've had a long discussion about reducing the traffic lane widths on Campbell Station Road and Kingston Pike. I believe that it's a public safety hazard that is used by rural metro, our first responder. A friend of mine is an emergency doctor. He works in the ER, asked me not to mention his name for legal reasons. But when I told him about this idea of reducing the lane width, he was adamant that that would just make his life very difficult. The great concern is gridlock. Gridlock robs him of time. I'm asking you to remove that. And last, and since Tom Hale is not with us, I have to ask you. On the agenda, this is not a plan. It is Ordinance 24-13. I would ask for a motion and a second to make it a plan, and then a deliberation and a vote. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
And the next speaker is Alderman David White, and after David, we have Alex Kane.
Please, board members, I'd like to reserve my comments till later in case I don't have to make any. Thank you.
I'll have it.
Okay, we have Alex Kane and then Angie Hodge after Alex.
Hello, Alex.
Good evening. And for disclosure, I am a candidate for North Ward Alderman. I live at 524 Wyndham Hall Lane. I want to say thank you for all of you who put time into this plan. It is very extensive, and I know it was a significant undertaking involving multiple stakeholders with different priorities and a wide range of opinions. I know the town faced major challenges while putting together this plan and presented it to our community with a very robust plan. Let us agree, no plan is perfect. I believe the work that you have done will serve our community for many years to come. It's important to acknowledge that not everything in a plan, or especially this plan, will come to reality. Times and circumstances change, just like Mr. Shipley said earlier. Future leaders need the opportunity to bring their knowledge, experience, and talents to this continuing project. Over the last week, there's been considerable confusion about the nature of this document on social media. Is it a vision plan, or is it going to become a town ordinance? Is it binding or merely advisory? For the average citizen, the term ordinance implies something that we must follow. According to the Town of Farragut website, this is a vision document, not something designed to set requirements like our town ordinances do. We should always avoid creating this type of confusion for our residents. The vision plan outlines our aspirations, while ordinances are mandatory with potential penalties for non-compliance. How do we proceed with a vision plan that is included amongst our laws and regulations? I support the vision plan, but I believe it should remain a plan and never become an ordinance. Moving forward, we should not treat it like one of excuse me, we should treat it just like our comprehensive land use plan and other town guiding documents. I urge you not to include the vision plan in any of our town ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
The next speaker is Angie Hodge, and after Angie is Mike Alley.
Angie Hodge, 11104 Nautical Drive. I live in Bridgewater, and Mark, you've answered my questions. I just want to say that I'm grateful to you guys for your service and your time. Mark has listened to me tirelessly. Your aldermen have listened to me tirelessly. Louise Pavlin gave me an hour and a half of her time, and I'm grateful. I just want to say thank you all for listening to us. We truly would love to see that road not, break through our neighborhood, and we're so grateful that y'all listen to us. One other word, I want to say your Public Works has done a great job fixing our sidewalks and helping us keep our beautiful neighborhood up, so thank you, guys.
Thank you, Angie. I appreciate you coming out tonight.
Mike Alley, 511 Windlass Road, which is, again, in Bridgewater. Kind of come down here looking for, hornet's nest, but I think we've come to an agreement that maybe you're not going to do that road. Those about 150 houses in there is going to be split in half. So anyway, again, I want to thank you guys. I don't know if we need to keep coming. Vision, it kind of goes with what this gentleman was saying. It's a little confusing. Hey, they're having a meeting, the doors are open, go down there. I don't know when it's going to be dead. Do we need to keep coming? I don't know what.
Well, I mean, I'll answer that. I mean, again, like we emphasize, it is a vision plan only, and we've pulled that language out that if it's approved tonight, it will go to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen without that language in it to remove that in the vision plan itself. So that there would only be a pedestrian connectivity rather than vehicular connectivity.
Okay. Well, and again, appreciate you guys. Just following what Angie said. Appreciate y'all's time. Thank you.
Mr. Alley, thank you for coming by this evening.
I mean, I would say keep in mind, you never know what a future planning commission or board could do. Never say never.
Absolutely.
You always have to watch for that, but it has been changed in the plan, so.
All right, well, with that.
The next, I've got two more speakers.
Oh, you
The
do
next
have
one
two.
is Randall Roberts, and then Michael Wilson is the last speaker.
Randall Roberts, 11905 Butternut Lane, Sugarwood. Thank you all for your time. Hate to beat a dead horse, but a lot of my stuff is the same concerns that Alex has expressed. Just for transparency, I'm running for Alderman, South Ward 2. As a potential future alderman, I'm concerned that making this plan into an ordinance will negatively impact future discussions, both at the FMPC level and at the mayor, board, and alderman level. It seems an ordinance infers that the items in the plan should be done versus a vision of what we want to see in the town center area. These development decisions should be made at the time the property is brought before this commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for consideration. This document should only serve as a guide for those discussions. No future commissioner or alderman should feel compelled to support something in this plan because it is part of an ordinance. Town officials need to be able to evaluate the vision in light of the circumstances of the time it's brought before them without feeling pressure to give this document more weight than that of other plans such as the comprehensive land use plan. A simple example are the medians in the middle of the roads. Right now, it might seem like a good idea to some, while others have expressed real concerns. As I've always said, everything looks good on paper. This is particularly true concerning the Concord Road medians shown in the plan. Traffic realities in 7 to 6 years might mean we need to further expand that road to accommodate additional traffic, and who really knows what the future is going to bring until it gets here. Few expected the traffic problems that we're now beginning to experience. I don't understand why anyone would consider including this plan in the appendices of the town ordinance in the same manner as zoning ordinances, subdivision regulations, and architectural design studies. It doesn't belong there. It would simply be a plan that provides guidance to future town officials, giving them the same flexibility and freedom to make the decisions as all of you have. Treat this as the same as the comprehensive land use plan has been treated for years, and this treatment has served you all well and will continue to serve your successors just as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Good evening, Michael Wilson, 412 Eisenhower Street, Farragut, Tennessee. MTAS states a municipal code is, quote, provides the governing body, the city's administration, and the citizens one basic source for discerning the current laws and regulations governing the city, unquote. Based on that definition, it seems our code of ordinances should continue to include only our laws and regulations that we are required to follow. Yesterday, Vice Mayor Pavlin posted the following comments on social media regarding this plan. Quote, regarding the mixed-use town center vision plan, it is just that, a vision plan, unquote. Further, she stated, quote, It's a guide to explore possibilities for development and redevelopment of property in the town center based on community input and feedback, unquote. Finally, she said, quote, nothing in this plan is mandatory, nothing in this plan is required, unquote. And we've heard that again expressed by several of you here. Couldn't her comments also describe the comprehensive land use plan, the pedestrian and bicycle plan, etc.? These are all plans that guide your conversations, decisions, discussions, etc. Understanding that this is a vision plan, ask yourself, why is this plan, unlike those others, being put in the town ordinance? Why does Resolution PC 2408 recommend approval to add this vision plan as Appendix G to the Town of Farragut Code of Ordinances? Over the last few days, there's been a lot said about this plan and some of its contents, namely the potential parking garage found on page 69 and 91. It's easy to see that this type of confusion will result from making this plan into an ordinance. As we all know, plans are guiding documents. Ordinances provide requirements to be followed. Will residents, developers, and others view this document and be confused? For example, a developer might question, can I build office space on the 10 acres currently zoned 01 on the Ford property? Or does this now need to be a mix of commercial, residential, and green space as listed on page 63 of this ordinance? If approved, how will this change impact your conversations and decisions as a planning commission? In that Ford property situation, do you follow the 01 zoning ordinance found in Appendix H? Or the vision plan ordinance found in Appendix G? I have advocated for this public outreach in the town center since the fall of 2020, and I support this plan. I support it and the recommendations. I don't even really have a problem with a parking garage if we need it 5 to 10 years down the road. Quite honestly, I really don't have a problem with most of the trees in the middle of the road. I think it looks nice, but that's my opinion. I agree with the Vice Mayor's comments. This is a vision plan, and it's a pretty good one. What it's not is a law or regulation. The plan should be treated the same as this other similar plans I mentioned. As the Vice Mayor confirmed, it's a plan, it's a guide, and nothing in this plan is mandatory or required. That, ladies and gentlemen, is not an ordinance, and thus it should not be in the town's code of ordinances. I ask that you vote no on this resolution and recommend that this plan be added to the list of town plans instead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Alderman White.
Just briefly, I want to echo what the last speaker said. I think in the brief time I've been here, everybody knows I'm really seriously interested in ordinances and the laws. And the charter actually states, when we were formed, that we are a town of ordinances. Ordinances should not be made of future plans, of hopes and dreams we want to do someday. Why would you make that an ordinance? I hope you will all listen to the last speaker and hear what I say and make this a vision plan for the future, for future boards like you, future aldermen like me, can make a decision, put it before the people, and let them decide. Let's not try to make things like this a law that eventually somebody will want you to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. I'll open it up to the commissioners. Do a roll call. Commissioner Pinchuk, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
I'm going to pass for now.
Pass. Commissioner Green?
No comment.
No comment. Vice Chairman St. Clair?
I have several comments on the Concord Road vision. One, I don't want to telegraph. I think the vision plan is exactly that, and it telegraphs an intent of our town and our citizens on what we see looking out in the future. Not that it can't be altered as circumstances arise, and situations arise. But I think that there's a definite tree line down the, kind of diagonal down the middle of that piece of property, that strip, all the way from Anchor Green Drive and the red light, all the way down to the current Pleasant Forest Cemetery. And I would like to see the Pleasant Forest Cemetery, or what we're calling the Civic Institution, shown going all the way up to that tree line in the floodplain to the west, and anything having to do with townhouses, basically starting at Hewlin Drive to the north. And I would not want to see any more curb cuts at all on Concord Road. You could easily come in for access on the backside down from Anchor Green Drive and come down that backside past that commercial and then jog down to the townhouses from that. I also don't like to see, the idea of expanding Concord Road is probably not very realistic. There can be some widening to it probably, but the idea of putting a tree line median down the middle of that is pretty ridiculous in my any kind of vision that I would see for that strip of road, as short as it is. And so I think that needs to be, and I'm not sure how much input was given by specific residents of Thornton Heights and or Concord Hills, where I live. I would be frank with everybody. But and then I worry also about the fact that we have townhouses, even in that strip. What kind of effect will we have of trying to create almost a canyon down that corridor, depending on how close those townhouses are to Concord Road itself? So I have a few comments about trying to tune this concept down Concord Road. The rest of the plan, I mean, we definitely need a vision plan, and I too, with the years that I've been on the planning commission and seeing lots of plans and lots of ordinances, I'm a little bit puzzled, and I was hoping Tom would be here tonight. Why is this an ordinance versus a plan? I'd like to know the question or the rationale behind that. I'm open to I just want to understand it. I'm not saying it shouldn't be or should be. I just want to understand
What was that question, Ed?
about why an ordinance versus just simply a plan like other plans that we've had for the 33 years I've been on the planning commission. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just don't understand the rationale. So that's my specific comments on the Concord Road corridor plus that overarching just question.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can show you a sketch of what I've got relative to that piece of property.
I would say the reason it's proposed as an ordinance in this case is similar to why it was with the architectural design guidelines. It gives the concepts that are in the plan more credibility if somebody's wanting to come in and do something, a developer or whoever has come to the town center area, they have a vision that the community is clearly embraced because they've adopted it as an ordinance. But it's still a vision plan. It just gives it a little more credibility, frankly, if it's adopted that way. But ultimately it's up to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, frankly, as to how they want to adopt it or if they want to adopt it. That's the reason it was presented as an ordinance. But it could be.
There was some reason it had come up in the background.
It could be something that you could either clarify the ordinance language to make it clear that it's vision only and not requirements. That could be easily done in the introductory section of the ordinance. Or it could be adopted as a resolution, or it's whatever, but I'm just telling you that was the logic of it. We did exactly the same thing with the architectural design guidelines. Most of that's in there are not requirements. There are some, but not all of it. And there's things that have happened in parts of the town that are shown in the architectural design guidelines that aren't reflective of what's in the guidelines. It's not what happened. But we didn't change the guidelines because of that, because they were seen as visual concepts for different parts of the town, like how Outlet Drive would develop. That was pre-Top Golf. Sure. Had a completely different concept. So again, I'm open to whatever you all are comfortable with. We can do this in various ways if you want to just.
Mark, what was the process for making the future land use map an official document?
The future land use map was adopted by ordinance only in the mixed-use town center area because the board felt like that was the top priority part of the town. So if somebody was going to vary the map, because the map is kind of like the zoning map, it kind of gives you a vision of this general part of the town. This is kind of where the community sees this is going as far as future development. So in that case, if you change that larger concept of land use, then the map needs to be updated as well to be consistent with the community's input, just like we've done with the different priority areas where we've made changes to the map that reflected changes to the community's thoughts on those different parts of the town. So again, but there's things in that plan that are shown as visual concepts that are not map related that we haven't changed, but they're not things that have happened or came to fruition because it's just a plan.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
The only comment I have is I just think I understand the comments and I agree with the comments, but somewhere it needs to be clear that this is not.
Yeah.
mandatory.
If we're going to adopt it by ordinance, my thought is to make it really clear in the ordinance language, the adopting language, what it is and what its intent is. Or don't adopt it by ordinance. Adopt it by resolution only. That's a possibility too. I told you the logic of why it was an ordinance, and that's why, because it gives it more credibility, more substance. If somebody wants to do something in this part of the town, they know that the community has adopted it because they bought into it. They felt like it was a good plan that they bought into, and they reflected that in the ordinance.
And I agree that we need to do something that makes it a meaningful document. People know it's a meaningful document. It doesn't get stuck on a back shelf somewhere and nobody looks at it again, because there's a lot of resident input as well as a lot of professional input into coming up with a plan.
That's right, yeah.
But I also recognize the comments that are being made here that we don't want to make people believe that somehow this is.
That's true. Yeah, those are good comments. I agree.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't know that making it a reference in the ordinance is a problem. I don't know which is better actually to do that. If a resolution accomplishes that without the harshness and the strictness of an ordinance, then perhaps a resolution is a better alternative. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Green. Mayor Williams, I'm Mayor Williams.
I don't think we're in no great big hurry to do this. I mean, we're not punching the clock on this, so I think we need to work on it some more. And I think that we should probably look at some different wording that would suit all the planning commissioners and to pass it on to the board with that particular wording.
As far as how we adopt it, is that what
Yes.
you're talking about? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
That's fine. It's up to you all. Yep.
thank you. Commissioner Devlin?
I think it's been a good discussion. I think a lot of good points were made at the podium tonight. But let me explain why I actually like the idea of it being an ordinance. Let me tell you why. For how many years now has this town had false starts, bombed out buildings, and had to abandon the future and the things that we wanted to do with the town center? I believe that people in this community can actually think through what a vision plan actually is and understand that the ordinance part of it is not some plot to mess with everybody later, but the ordinance is saying that we are committed to this, and this is something that we are going to do for this community in the future. Now, again, I get why there's pushback on doing it as an ordinance, and certainly willing to have the discussion not to do it that way. But I also completely understand why this community needs to get the message that we are committed to having this kind of future for this town. I think the community deserves it and can handle the information.
Thank you, Commissioner Devlin. Commissioner Preston?
This may be an unpopular opinion, but I'm all for the medians on Concord Road if the road were, at some point expanded, not necessarily to accommodate more traffic, but to accommodate medians, because that's in the parent responsibility zone. And I am for anything and everything that will slow traffic down on Concord Road. Because kids walk home from school, they walk to school. We don't need more traffic on Concord Road, we need less. If we slow traffic down, maybe they'll take Campbell Station instead, which is designed for that level of speed. So that's my opinion on that. As far as the ordinance versus resolution, if it's passed as an ordinance and somebody wants to change it, doesn't it have to go through us and BOMA?
Well, I mean, it would depend on what it is. If it's a major concept change, because again, I go back to the fact that this is a concept document.
Sure.
So if you're basically going to say, let's say on the Ford property, that the community now wants a 200,000 square foot big box building there. Obviously, that's a major change to the concept that was in this vision plan. And the plan, in my opinion, in that regard, would have to be certainly updated and certainly changed. That would be a significant change that should, frankly, go to the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Whether there's a parking garage or whether it's where it's shown is not necessarily, it's a concept, an idea that there might be a need for a parking garage at some point somewhere in the mixed-use town center area, depending on how it evolves over time. I mean, I can tell you that at $40,000 a space, the town's not going to be building a parking garage anytime soon. I think I could speak for the town in that regard. So again, it's just a concept. All these things that are in the plan, there's general recommendations in the last two sections that have these general ideas, more green space, more connectivity, concepts that drive decisions that are made on developing more detailed ordinance-related requirements, like amendments to the zoning ordinance or amendments to the subdivision regulations, things like that, that are inherently designed to be requirements, to be implementation tools. A vision plan, by its nature, is not that. Never has been. Again, it does. If the board is more comfortable not adopting it as an ordinance, then that's their prerogative. From the staff's perspective, I think it should be at least adopted as a resolution at a minimum, because again, I think we need to show to people that may have an interest in doing something, or a future board in this part of the town, that we have, we've kind of like these concepts that are in this plan. And that's something that we really want to see happen in some fashion, in some manner. It may not be exactly the way it's shown in the plan, but the concept may be realized. And so I think that at a minimum, that would be, the best case scenario if it's not adopted by ordinance. The other option would be to make it more clear in the ordinance adoption language, like the whereas section that the staff puts together, that it lays out exactly what this is and how it's to be applied, so that it's very clear to anybody of what this document is to be used for.
So it's really just about how serious someone takes it if they're coming in to develop the town.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I proposed it as being in an ordinance is because it adds a higher level of seriousness and credibility to the document itself, that the community has really bought into this. It doesn't mean that everything in here is going to happen and going to happen the way it's shown, but they have bought into the vision, the concepts, the general ideas that are being promoted in this overall plan.
Commissioner Meyer?
For the record, I also like the medians on Concord Road. I happen to live on Concord Road. I think codifying the document is important to overcome some of the distrust that the town has in the development community. And I think that if we can promote transparency for somebody from the outside looking in and they understand what our vision is, I think that's going to help them prepare a plan that's maybe a little closer to our vision versus something that is apples and oranges with our vision. I also think that we could put some language in there, and we've done it plenty of times. There's plenty of times where we use the word may instead of shall, and I think that this plan is kind of like that. You're like, hey, this is what we're looking for, and yeah, and typically any kind of development that's going to be coming to the town of Farragut, they're going to be looking for some concessions or variances, and this tells them that, hey, if you want the town to work with you, this is the plan that we would like to see, and you've got a lot better shot of trying to overcome some of the obstacles, i.e. obtaining variances, than if you come in with a plan that's completely different than this. So I think in the interest of transparency, for somebody being able to get into our municipal code and look at it and see it as an addendum and including some language in there that says, hey, this is a plan that has been developed with a lot of community outreach of what the community is looking for, I think that could potentially save a developer a lot of time and effort and money if their plan is nothing like this plan. So with that being said, I don't think we're ready to adopt it or approve it tonight. Really, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen would adopt it at their discretion. So what I'd like to do is withdraw my second, because otherwise we have to vote on it with a motion and a second. But if I could withdraw my second, and that way it'll give the staff some time to wordsmith the introductory paragraph in the plan and maybe address some of the concerns that the community has about how rigid this plan is. And the plan is not designed to be a super rigid plan. It is designed to share with folks, hey, this is what we would like to see. Let's work together and see if we can obtain these results or results similar to this.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask
We got to get you on the microphone.
One moment,
When the chairman's ready for you.
please.
We're not there yet.
We're having it open to the commission at the moment, and I've got some comments I would like to make as well. Commissioner Green, you have the floor.
Yeah, and listening to the discussion, another thought occurred to me. 4 years from now, there may be a different Board of Mayor and Aldermen and a lot of different planning commissioners for all we know. And having this as a part of an ordinance, I think helps preserve it, protect it. I haven't heard anybody say anything bad about it. So I actually think that helps preserve it, makes it harder for future government, this government in town, to ignore it. Okay? So I think that's a benefit, actually, of helping to keep it preserved. It's flexible, but it's there, and it can't be totally ignored because it's would be a part of our ordinance. So that's another thought to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Green. I just want to say, that a lot of work's gone into this. There's a lot of public input. I agree with all the comments that we heard tonight. I agree with all of our commissioners. I don't think our views were varying, but I think Mayor Williams put it into good perspective, saying that we're not on the shot clock, and I think that we could revisit the language, and how we approach it, whether ordinance or resolution. So with that said, I think Commissioner Meyer, if you would like to rescind your second, at this time rather than vote, would we need a motion to defer action?
Well, I think your first thing would be the motion would just die without a second.
Very good.
And then the second thing is then we'd probably need a motion to either table it or postpone it.
Okay.
Pending something that you table it, kind of leaves it out there indefinitely. Postponing it means, hey, we're going to put it on the agenda in the near term is kind of, I think, General Roberts rules.
Okay, yep, very good. So the motion on the second on the floor has been rescinded. And with that said, do we have a motion to postpone approval of the Town of Farragut Mixed-Use Town Center Vision Plan?
So moved.
Second. Moved with second. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Noes, no noes. Let the record show that this item has been postponed. The vote of 8 yes, 0 noes. Thank you, everybody. I think it's, I'll allow it, Mr. Wilson, if you would. motion has been approved, just
Thank you,
FYI.
Commissioner, I appreciate that. I did want to say, if you look in our appendices to our Code of Ordinances, we did this for the Mixed-Use Town Center under the CLUP, under the Land Use Plan. The whole document from the Mixed-Use Town Center is not imported into the ordinance, but there's a standalone document that says this is what the town wants from the Mixed-Use Town Center. I just want to propose to staff and to this commission, maybe that's an option, is that we put exactly what you all are talking about. We don't want this to die. We want this is critical to our town, and point it back to this is a plan that we want to hold to, and put that language of the criticality of this, the importance of this, just like we did, Mark, with the Mixed-Use Town Center portion of the land use plan, how that has like one page in there with the highlights that would point back. I just raised that as a suggestion, as a possible middle ground to get this. So thank you again for the
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Okay, are we ready to go back to agenda item number 8? I believe we have the applicant here tonight. Agenda item number 8.
Yes, he's here.
Discussion on an amendment to the development concept plan for the commercial portion of Kingston Pike Village, Farragut Junction, PCD Planned Commercial Development Project at the southwest intersection of Kingston Pike and South Watt Road. Daniel Smith, applicant.
We talked about this last month. We looked at two different concepts. One was a commercial office. The other had some residential with a vertical mixed use. And basically the predominant feedback that was provided to the applicant was that there wasn't really an appetite for more residential in this PCD project. So the applicant has gone back to the first option there on the screen is basically similar to option 1 that was presented last month, which is all retail office. You still have the drive-through, but it's a different, kind of a little different location, but it's still in the area along Kingston Pike, and as I mentioned last month, would require a text amendment to the PCD, probably the non-mixed-use town portion of the PCD, because drive-throughs are all currently required to be internal, which would be in this part of the development. The applicant has submitted, although it was after the packet went out, a concept that they did want to get your all's feedback on, because to be clear, the feedback that we're asking for this evening is just to evaluate the general location and general mixture of uses that they're showing, whether you all are comfortable with that. They're going to have to develop basically a new development concept plan, and there's a number of things that they don't have yet that will be needed, but they wanted to have some clarity moving forward on the uses and the general placement of buildings. So again, this option here is the commercial office. The second was in looking at the need for daycare facilities. They are showing a proposed daycare facility here along the west part of the project. That would be in this general area. Again, you'd still have kind of, it looks like there's still some commercial office here. This, although I think doesn't look like a drive-through in this particular part of the concept. And then kind of a similar layout.
Same plan I have, or what?
No, that was not in the packet, like I mentioned earlier. I just told Daniel I would put it on the PowerPoint because it came in out. I was out of town, and so it came in way late for the packet. So, but since this is just a discussion item, I told him I'd present it, and he can go over this in more detail. The concept of having a daycare facility in this general part of the development, again, is a use that I think they're wanting to get feedback from you all on as to whether that's something you're open to or not. If you're not, that's good feedback for them, and they can proceed with the commercial office option only. But that's kind of the two options that they have. I think, as I mentioned last month and in the packet, when they start working on the more detailed development concept plan set that'll go to both you all and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, they really need to get I would say, a placemaker type professional to look at how they can kind of mesh this a little bit better. They do have quite a bit of outdoor seating areas with some of this commercial, but I think there's still some opportunities to try to do some creative things and create some more gathering spaces that would be kind of consistent with that sense of place that's really emphasized in the planned commercial development district that you could not really achieve with a conventional type of general commercial development. So that's kind of an overview of where we're at this point. The developer is here, the applicant. He can review this in more detail or answer any questions you may have, but that's all I have on this.
All right, thank you, Mark. Before we get started, I'm going to ask if we can have a motion and a second before we open discussion from the applicant.
I think, aren't we still just in the?
It's just a
the
workshop.
phase?
It's just a workshop item.
My apologies.
Just like, wait a second.
Following procedure. Please proceed.
Daniel Smith, 4th Street Capital, 315 Train Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, this is, we want to kind of be pushing things forward from here on out now that we've kind of centered on a route to go. Before we decided to go down that track, though, we wanted to get some feedback on the potential daycare. We've been talking to a daycare outfit that's interested in the market, interested in our site, and so we wanted to put that out there. One of the issues with the daycare is we think it would fall within the ordinance of a school and would require alcohol serving establishments to be 340 feet away from the daycare, which is driving why the daycare has been pushed to the far east or west. And we put a radius there to indicate what buildings might be impacted by the lack of, wouldn't have any restaurant or anything like that would serve alcohol. The rest of the property would be able to have a Mexican restaurant or a brewery or whatnot. Anything outside of that radius, as far as we understand the code of ordinances, to not limit that. So before we move forward with our kind of final round of getting this to a place that we could present it as a concept plan to be voted on, to amend the PCD ordinance and zoning that's in place now, we just wanted to get this final kind of round of feedback. And also, we've kind of moved back towards just simply putting it into one retail building on Kingston Pike and not separated out at two. I think for vehicular traffic, it just was getting, I think it was going to be a little bit complex to have it with a drive lane between the properties and have it separated into two different structures. So that's kind of where this is right now, that we wanted to get initial kind of feedback, and then we would look to come back through again to the developer meeting in the first part of the month following this, and then again try to get towards a concept plan that we could vote on, maybe not next month, but the following.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Since our last meeting, Commissioner Devlin, would you like to provide some comments, please?
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely love the idea of getting some form of childcare built out too. I mean, it's a known quantity. There was a large workshop on childcare issues locally within the last week. There's people that literally don't work in the workforce because of childcare issues. Now, how does that directly affect Farragut? I don't know the data on that, I admit it, but overall, locally, childcare issues are real. So giving people an opportunity to have some more slots, whatever the price point may be, is still a good thing.
Yeah, more availability, hopefully the price point stabilizes. I know that, I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, 7-year-old is almost 8, but we had at one time a lot of difficulty trying to find childcare until they got into JK3 and preschool programs. It was difficult.
Very difficult. Commissioner Preston, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
I mean, I think an extra daycare would be great, and I like this plan better than the last two,
Which one?
than the last meeting.
Okay,
Both of them from the last meeting, I like this one better.
okay.
Commissioner Meyer?
Well, personally, I'm a little disappointed that the residential got omitted. However, I also know that I was kind of the lone wolf in that support, so I understand that where you're going with this. I think the daycare is a fine use. I don't see an issue with it. I'd love for you to take your buildings that are front and center on Kingston Pike and look at pulling them up against Kingston Pike and putting all your parking behind. It's been done in multiple locations in the town of Farragut. It's real successful. It de-emphasizes your parking lots. Obviously, if you have a drive-through, you got to be creative with your drive-through, but you're going to have to be a little creative with your drive-through in a PCD anyway. And we may have to do a text amendment it looks like you still got a drive-through with this plan. But I do think that's a great style of development that emphasizes your architecture and de-emphasizes your parking lots, and kind of gets away from the traditional strip mall that we have very prevalent in the town of Farragut. And so you may have and again, this is a concept plan. I generally support your concept plan. Your dumpster locations are probably a little squirrely of trying to get a trash truck making those sharp turns, so you're gonna have to get creative with your dumpster locations. Again, that can be solved at the site plan stage. So again, generally I support where you're going. I would have loved to see the residential in there. I thought it was real innovative. However, I think most of the commission didn't have the appetite for the residential, but and there's absolutely a need. With the calls that we get on daycares are crazy. I mean, there's so many daycares that are trying to come into the town of Farragut because it is underserved, and I'm not sure it's going to do anything for pricing. I think it's still going to be expensive no matter what, and that's probably why they want to be here. However, there's a need for it, and I think it's a great use. You've got plenty of green space to get their little playground in. You've got a little kind of a green area that's in the parking lot. You can probably do something creative with that to address kind of staff's concerns about the sense of place. And so, we would, and you've been very proactive thinking about the 340 feet, so you would be eligible. But I think if you're outside that 340, I don't think there's anything in the PCD that prohibits a daycare. So
No.
I don't think that would require any kind of amendment. So I think generally it's a good plan. Please do look at pulling your building up towards Kingston Pike and putting your parking behind.
If we looked at that, the drive-through would have to be something similar to the Starbucks out here. How has that been generally as a configure? It's a bit different than what you normally
I don't know,
see.
my 17-year-old daughter uses that drive-through at Starbucks, I think daily, because I see the credit card. So whatever's, that Starbucks drive-through works well. And it, what's great is when you're looking at those buildings, and even from Kingston Pike, you really don't see that drive-through. And that was a big thing with PCD, why we really didn't want drive-throughs. So I think personally, I would support the drive-through if you could de-emphasize it behind the building.
One of the challenges with that, though, is you'd have it on the side of the building. Unlike that property there, you have a big hill that blocks that view, so.
I think it can still be done.
You'd see the vehicular traffic on the left side of the property if you had a kind of routing around, like it came down and came back up or
I think you can still do it. Think of the landscaping that they did. Even if the topography wasn't there, they've got nice landscaping, and it's not, and you've got, you can kind of tell on your plan, you've got a row of, something green in there to de-emphasize the drive-through. But I do think with some creative design, you could, you could still have the vehicular access over to Little Joe's and pull your buildings up and emphasize your architecture. And anyway, I really support that style of development.
Okay, we'll look at it before the next round and see if we can make it work.
Okay, great.
And we'll
Thank
come
you,
back
Commissioner Myers.
with kind of more final plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Pinchuk?
Yeah, a couple comments. First of all, I'm all for the daycare. I think it's a great idea having that. And if we go along with Noah's idea of moving the buildings closer to Kingston Pike forward, you're going to have a big area of parking in the middle. My thoughts are, first of all, what is your parking situation? Are you okay, or you have more than?
Right now, that right there is, if you took the retail section of it, it's roughly 30,000 square foot of retail. and the parking ratio across that 30,000 is like 8.5. The daycare wouldn't need all the parking, so we would have some sort of cross-access easement, not on all of it, but some of it for some overflow, probably on the edges, the back part of it. And so I think we'd be at 10 to 1, which is pretty good. I think if there's a mixture of uses, obviously with a sit-down restaurant, you want it well above 10, but, and quick, but generally the rule of thumb is, 5 to 8 on a large project like that I think we'd have plenty of parking. The biggest challenge with parking is if we got a brewery, if we got a Mexican restaurant, if, you start really needing that parking.
Well, my thought was, if you move the buildings on Kingston Pike further closer to Kingston Pike, could you take one of the 4 buildings south of that and put it in the center so that there's just not this sea of parking, huge amount of parking that's going to be visible if you move those buildings forward?
And you got a drainage easement in the center. So
Yep.
you can't put them right in the middle. You'd have to
Somewhere.
generally keep them where they are.
You could make that drainage easement a linear green space and have a large green space that kind of breaks that otherwise large expanse of parking, because I understand what you're saying, but you could break that parking up by incorporating an overly wide green space that may have a sidewalk through it or
It
something
could be
like
just
that.
10 feet wide and it would make a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I think you're overparked, Daniel, but if you put in a bunch of restaurants, then you do need the parking. I mean, I do understand that. But I would like, it also, if you look at where the Little Joe's building placement is, it would all, you kind of put it in line where Little Joe's is, so you're not having that funny kind of staggered. You're going to be kind of, anyway, you kind of heard my rationale on why I like it.
But it also creates a stagger at the bank too. But I understand. In other words, the bank's set off with the parking on the side, I believe.
Yeah, it's a little more traditional style of development.
But we'll look at it again, and one of the issues too is there's a bit of a funkiness that happens when I think there's a certain amount of distance the fire trucks need on the front of the building between the property line, and so if we put it up along the property line, we get into a situation where the setbacks have to be, I think, 25 feet. Actually, in the initial concept plan, it was 20 feet, but
No, I think you can get within 20. That in the event of emergency, if they had to attack the fire, they could attack it from Kingston Pike. I mean, it's been approved by the fire marshal on multiple occasions in the town, and so I mean, it's now if Kingston Pike was a 2-lane road, that would be different.
Yeah, it's been approved by the fire marshal. It meets the requirements. Since we're having the discussion, the hotel, I didn't bring it up because I know it was approved already and meets the codes, but having only 2 sides access isn't ideal.
Well, especially on a 4-story building when you're dealing with a ladder truck, I could understand that.
it creates a little bit of a funkiness too with the entry to the bank where it is.
No, I mean, I think your entrance points would stay the same. I think you're just lighting your
It
building
would,
up.
but we'd have to make that the entry point, which it eats up kind of some parking and kind of kills, but, we'll look at it again and.
It's one of those things, it's kind of like the vision plan.
Yeah.
It's a may, not a shall.
Yep.
We'd like to encourage you to be creative in your design, and, but, if that's the design that works, other than your drive-through.
I've not pushed the drive-through to really look and see if we can do it, and I think we may be able to do it, so we'll look at it.
Okay.
We will, and we'll come back one more time, not probably before here, but when we're ready, we'll come back with kind of the plan that we think we're going to go with to the initial meeting, and then staff development meeting, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. There may be some other commissioners that at the end of the day, you're here to try to get feedback. So, you probably want to know, is there anything somebody doesn't like? Because it sounds generally where you like the direction you're going with it.
Ron, for you?
I'm done.
Good. Commissioner Green?
I'm in general support of your concept here, and I don't really have anything to add to the comments that have been offered by the rest of the commission.
Vice Chairman?
I'm generally in agreement with that daycare. I think that's, so long we deal with elder care, now with daycare, we kind of got the two needs on the extreme. And certainly, I hear from people who are younger folks, some that they have a real struggle finding daycare. And then, of course, availability as well as price. So anything you can do to help that market, I think, and in seeing the town, I think would be great. I do have that still same concern that we've already heard about all that center core of pavement. And, but otherwise, over the overall concept, I think, the sooner we can get things hammered out and get this thing finished. It'll be
Yep,
the best.
we've got a lot of, that front building, we've got a number of tenants that would like to do it in 2025, so we gotta hurry to get there. I think they'll do it in 2026 if it ends up that, but we're gonna try to move it forward and try to start construction this year, hopefully, if we can get there.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for your time. I hope, hope we provided the feedback you were looking for.
I said a word. Ask the mayor. Yeah.
Daniel, I apologize. I got out ahead of my skis. The mayor would like to make a comment or several comments.
Sorry about that.
I think daycares and coffee shops go together. I think you're going to need room for stacking because coffee shops require quite a bit of stacking. But it would be good, and daycare would be good because you have the dog daycare right down the street, the coffee shop, then the daycare. That's all.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that was agenda item number 8. Moving on, agenda item number 11, discussion and public hearing on amendments to the future land use map and the comprehensive land use plan update involving the following locations. Location 1, updating the land purchased by Knox County Schools off Boring Road to reflect a civic institutional land use designation. Number 2, updating the land purchased by the town of Farragut off McPhee Road to reflect a parks and recreation land use designation. Item number 3, updating the areas that are currently shown as medium-density residential and low-density residential south and east of the Ford property and the Park Place subdivision to reflect a very low-density residential land use designation. Number 4, updating areas that are currently shown as medium-density residential along a portion of Concord Road to reflect a low-density residential land use designation in the northern portion and the civic institutional land use designation for the Pleasant Forest Cemetery and the area abutting cemetery to the north. Town of Farragut.
Okay, that's kind of a long, that's probably the longest caption I've ever had on an agenda item, so that was a good job of reading through that. I'll just go over these individually. I can say that this is advertised as a public hearing, although it's a workshop item, and that is because there's a 30-day notice that you needed to have before you amend the future land use map. That's been our practice the last several future land use map amendments. So it's not a voting item, but it is advertised as a public hearing. So it would be treated as such. All 4 of these amendments are really just reflect how the land is either likely going to be used or maybe an existing land use designation that isn't consistent with the use that's there now or the vision plan that we're looking at in the town center area, for example. So the first area that is proposed for amendment is the area on Boring Road, the 41-acre tract that Knox County Schools recently purchased. That is currently low density and very low density residential and open space where the buffer zone is. We're proposing to change that to civic institutional because that's how the land's going to be used. The open space area that's the buffer zone would not change. I don't think the school has any plans to do anything in that portion of the land. And it does kind of provide the school with some protection from the commercial uses to the south. Second area is the area that the town purchased off McPhee Road recently. And that is mostly open space cluster residential and open space. We're proposing to change that to parks and recreation. Land use is, again, that's how the land is likely going to be used. The area that's open space is just this drainage area. It's a pretty significant drainage area that goes kind of bisects through the property. That's not proposed to be changed because that's, again, a physical feature that open space is consistent with. The third area is the area south and east of Ford property and Park Place subdivisions. That area is mostly medium-density residential and low-density residential right now, which are 6 to 8 units per acre in medium-density residential and low-density 4 to 6 units. Given the topography of much of that land and the fact that all the existing subdivisions that surround this area are very low-density residential, 2 to 4 units per acre, we're proposing to change those areas that are currently shown as medium-density and low-density residential to the very low-density residential land use again, and that would also be consistent with where the vision plan does overlap into this area. And then fourth is the area along Concord Road. A couple of things here. All that area that's in yellow is currently, most of that's currently shown as medium density residential, 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre. We're proposing to change most of that to very low density residential, which would account for the townhomes that are shown in the vision plan. And then the area where the Pleasant Forest Cemetery is would be civic institutional, along with a small area to the north of that that would also be civic institutional, where the cemetery could expand in the future. So that's really the 4 areas that are proposed to be changed under this workshop item discussion. If any of you all have any questions or comments or concerns about any of these, I'd be happy to try to answer your
Very good, Mark.
answer your questions.
Thanks, Mark. Do you guys want to just open it up and just go right down the aisle? Number 1, the land purchased by Knox County Schools off Boring Road.
Is that closed? Have they closed on that property? For sure? Okay.
We feel like the property is closed, so does anybody else have any? I think this is kind of a rubber stamper.
Yeah, I think these are kind of housekeeping items, so.
Sure.
I mean, I don't need to, I support all 4 of these changes. I know we're not voting on this. But,
Right.
But from where I stand, I support all 4 of those as presented.
Okay, thank you, Noah, and I just want to, does everybody else feel the same way, or does anybody have any?
I just have a comment on this.
No, we've got comments.
No, that's what we're going to open up for. That's what we're asking.
I fully
Commissioner
support
Green.
number 3, but my question is, those are pretty good acreages of land. Are the landowners kind of aware that what we're doing here? Do you know, or is that what the 30-day period is for?
Well, there is public notification on it, but again, this is not a zoning change.
No, I get that, but
This is purely just a plan
seems like
change.
we got a lot of flack a few years back here when we did that, and the owner never knew what we were doing, so.
Most of that's zoned very low density residential right now.
Mm-hmm.
All
I
right.
mean, so by right
I
now,
support it. I think it's a great idea.
frankly, the land use designation is higher than the by right zoning of most of that land right now.
Hence the reason to change it again.
Maybe I support it. I just want to, for transparency, it'd be nice if we know what's going on.
That's a good point, Commissioner Green, thank you.
My questions, clarifications have to do with item 4. If I read this map, Mark, that you got on the screen. Mark? And it talks about medium-density residential, low-density residential, and low-density residential to very low-density residential, and the parks and rec to civic institutional. from the color coding, I'm having a hard time with my eyes seeing what the very low density residential is. And then there's nothing, no mention of that it only mentions low density residential in the northern portion, and then it talks about the civic institutional.
Yeah, that map
description.
is.
So I'm confused on crosswalking, what we're talking about.
That map
between
needs to be updated, frankly. It's not. The intent was the area where the arrow's pointed to, that's going to be civic institutional, because that accounts for the growth of the cemetery. The cemetery would be civic institutional. Currently, it's Parks and Rec, which is not accurate. Then the area to the north of that would be low-density residential, which is consistent with the townhome concept that's shown in the vision plan.
And the color code.
So the map just needs to be cleaned up, frankly.
And I think that maybe there's some synergy with some of the comments I'll give you about the boundaries there a little bit. But
Yeah, this is the
since it's a
floodplain
workshop,
here.
I'll give you those comments after the meeting.
Okay, and then all this is the floodplain that extends out.
I'd like to see that, the cemetery go up a little bit further there to the tree line, like what Ed was talking about.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, just get me that, and I'll
As far
make
as
sure
civic institution.
we get the map more clearly designated.
Since you're fixing the map.
Yes, it's we're gonna fix it, run it all the way up to that, there's a drainage ditch that runs through there. Run it all the way up to the drainage ditch.
Get rid of any.
And you're not gonna have it on both sides, then?
Right.
I'll show you. See, it's just like that. Right.
Anybody else
I'm
have
just saying
any,
take that all to civic institution.
any comments or questions on any of that?
Get rid of curb cuts. Oh,
That's all we've got.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your input.
Utilities?
Do we, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I forgot you, but not the utilities. Mark, are there any utilities this evening?
No, sir.
And apparently we don't have any citizen forum.
No, sir.
That said, the time is approximately 9:06 p.m. and the June 20th, 24 Farragut Municipal Planning Commission meeting is adjourned.
the other thing I was talking about is still have more curb
Huh?
cuts on Concord Road.
Okay, great.
Access to these townhouses here, just come down the side of the commercial building, come down that back.
I don't want to